أهلا وسهلا فيكم. اسمحوا لي إني أدير الجلسة ويكون الحديث باللغة الإنجليزية. Good morning everybody. Welcome ladies and gentlemen to this main panel on managing water system within fragile environments in the Arab region. I'd like to introduce I'm Rashad Dawood. I come from Jordan and I have 20 plus years of experience in different aspects related to water sector management, governance improvements, and implementing cost recovery programs and financial performance improvement programs in Jordan and the region. Our session today, we will discuss management options for our region. As you know, our region is characterized by severe water scarcity. The precipitation rates is decreasing and falling in different areas of the region. And also we have high population growth rate, social, economic instability in different countries. And as the minister spoke in the morning in his opening speech, financial scarcity in terms of governments, private sector, and communities being able to finance new infrastructure and expand services. We continue to see increasing water production costs, especially from desalination and water transfer programs or schemes, and major challenges in financing new infrastructure. Water productivity in our region is very low and below world average. If we speak about water productivity in some countries like the Netherlands, it's about $100 per cubic meter. So for each cubic meter, the output that they'll get out of water is about $100. In some areas and some countries in the region, water productivity is less than $1 per cubic meter. And this is a very alarming number if we come to think about it. How much we're utilizing our water resources and what is the financial and economic value of each cubic of water that we're using. This morning, we learned a lot about the challenges in the region and what are the solutions. In my opinion, and we're going to discuss this in the session, we're going to talk about management and technology innovations, how we're going to deploy these management and technology innovations to benefit or to address the gaps between supply and demand in our region. Water governance, and again, this morning we heard about water governance and management structure and improving the regulatory schemes and the tools and the financial incentives to be able to address water issues. Partnerships, and here, when we speak about partnerships, it's partnerships among the governments of the region, partnerships with the private sector, and even at small scale level, partnerships with communities. And finally, and probably Dr. Rashad is going to talk more about this, innovative financing mechanisms. What are the innovative financing mechanisms and how we can raise finance to address the scarcity issues in the region. We have on the panel, as you see, Dr. Hazem and Naser, Minister of Water and Irrigation. I will not say what year he graduated from university. I will skip that. But he got his postdoctorate degree in 1996 from Harvard, and he has a PhD from Germany, from Munich Technical University. And Dr. Hazem is well known in the region and related to water challenges and water management. He authored more than 50 articles and publications and authored a book also on water management in the Arab region. He's been involved in the government sector, in the water sector in particular, for the past 20 years, started there in 1993, 1994, 25 years. He was a manager for the DC Water Project. He was Secretary General for the ministry for a number of years and minister back in 2001 to 2005. And again, a new term as a minister from 2011 or 12 till now. Definitely, he led major initiatives, including the Red project, the DC program implementation, and other projects in Jordan. أهلا وسهلا Dr. Hazem. Also, I'd like to introduce Dr. Peter McCornick. Peter and I go 20 years back, 1998, 1999. He was working here in Jordan on one of USAID programs. Peter is now the executive director for Robert Daugherty Water Food Global Institute at University of Nebraska in the States. He leads the institute and builds its relationships and collaborations with partners in Nebraska, in the US, and in other countries, with focus on basically ecosystems and developing programs to improve food production in different biosystems and ecosystems. Peter has dedicated his career to improving the understanding of sustainable water resources management. He led research and development programs on water, agriculture, and environment in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Peter earned his doctorate in agricultural engineering from Colorado State University, is a licensed professional civil engineer in the state of Colorado, and a member of the American Academy of Water Resource Engineers. Dr. Rashad Al-Shawa is the chairman of the Founders Committee and vice chairman of the advisory board of the International Water Bank, and he's going to talk to us today about this newly established bank and his initiative there. And also he's board of My Resources International, based in Switzerland, and he's a member of the World Water Council. Last but not least, Nancy Eslick. Nancy is working for USAID here in Jordan. She's the Deputy Mission Director, and she's been here for almost 2 years. In May, she'll be here for 2 years, I remember. And before coming to Jordan, Nancy worked in different offices for USAID, including the main head office in Washington, D.C. as Director for Office of Central American and Mexican Affairs in the Latin America and the Caribbean Bureau, and as a Division Chief for Workforce Planning and Program in Human Capital and Talent Management Office. In 2013, she assisted in the opening of USAID Burma as the Supervisory Program Officer. She worked in Pakistan, also specialized in government-to-government assistance and project design as the Mission Director Senior Advisor. Other countries on her list: Uganda, Afghanistan, Nepal, India, and she started her career as a Peace Corps volunteer. Welcome. All right. I'd like to invite our first speaker, Peter McCornick, to talk to us about how we can increase the potentials of solutions, or how we can increase the opportunity and provide solutions to address the challenges in the Middle East and the Arab region in particular. Peter.
You're right. Yeah. Thank you, Rad. Thank you, His Excellency Dr. Hazem and Engineer Khaldun for inviting me to present here this morning. As Rad mentioned, I actually worked here in 2000, 2001 in the Jordan Valley, Amman Zarqa Basin, and working on the groundwater and the wastewater and the water resources management and agriculture in the Jordan Valley. So I'm very grateful to be back here and presenting here. I've been back to Jordan multiple times since then, but to see the changes and the progress and some of the challenges that have emerged certainly in those 15, 16 years, it's quite an undertaking. We heard from a number of the speakers this morning about the challenges in this region, but challenges just more widely in the world, this increasing scarcity. We hear a lot about water scarcity, degradation of the resource, the quantity of the degradation on just how much water we can get in any one location, how we may achieve access to it, but also the quality. And although we do mention quality, and here it's very much in everyone's mind, it certainly is sort of given less attention than the quality of water resources. And as Dr. Hazem mentioned in his earlier presentation, as water gets scarcer, the energy challenges get greater. The energy to lift, to convey, then to treat the raw water and the wastewater. And I think as an engineer, I was trained to think about all this sort of systematically, about the energy, the water, the interconnections. But when you come to somewhere like Jordan and you really look at some of these challenges on the ground, where you're talking 1,600 meter lifts, desalinating raw water, the wastewater, then having to treat that to return it back into, and in a relatively energy short country. This really brings it home, makes you understand just what some of the challenges really mean in a context like this. It's gratifying to hear the energy development around solar and wind and some of these options that certainly allow a country to internalize that energy demand or that energy supply. The competition and interconnectivity between the sectors in the water, energy, food, how the energy and the water sectors play out, how that intensifies. Again, as we get water scarce, those become more extreme. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I think it's important to really think about the context that we're working in, and how we then allocate to healthy ecosystems. Other priorities for industry, for agriculture, for domestic use, and ecosystems end up generally getting what's left. This is not just the case here, it's the case in some of the larger, drier rivers in the US and elsewhere in the world. Again, they vary with context, and it really requires the expertise, the understanding, the experience on the ground to really adjust for that context. And they vary with scale. How do we get these to fit in at the farm level to the global level? There's a global discourse around these concepts, but when you start scaling that down to the lower levels in at the system, down to the town, down to the Jordan Valley level, these become quite different in how we interpret them and how we address them. So in the opportunity, we do need to increase water productivity in agriculture. That's one area where we are very much focused on in the institute I work for. And how do we, often that agriculture is dealing with degraded surface and groundwater, a poorer supply in terms of quantity, but also increasingly in many parts of the world, the quality is degraded because it's at the end of the system. Agriculture is getting what's left over. And so this is a challenge in agriculture as well, how to handle those conditions. So I'm going to take you out of the region for a brief note. Rashad was not too keen on spending too much time on this, but I would like to talk a little bit about the water, energy, food challenges in Nebraska that I've actually only been learning over the last 6 months because I'm new to the region. There, from the 70s onwards, there was a massive expansion of groundwater development. There's a huge agricultural sector now in Nebraska. It's the 4th largest agricultural state in the US. That groundwater expanded very fast with the advent of tube wells, access to cheap energy, and it was basically chasing the water down. As the water table dropped, there was major changes around the technologies and the practices, how the equipment they were using. And in most cases, they've actually got the systems to settle down, and the water tables have stopped dropping. And in many ways, the agricultural system in Nebraska has stabilized. And productivity has continued to increase quite dramatically. So this is the positive news. A big part of that has been around the governance. As Dr. Hazem was talking about in his earlier presentation, how do we get the governance to work? And in Nebraska, they broke up the state into 23 natural resource districts. Each one is different in the way it functions. Each one's dealing with a different context. It's under a loose state system, but basically it comes down to involving the community, managing the landscapes, ensuring recharge, So a big part of the solution there is there's this thinking around how do you govern the landscapes, how do you govern the groundwater to ensure that you don't A, over pump, and B, you ensure recharge. There's still issues. I mean, there's relatively cheap energy, but peak energy coincides also with the demand for energy in the growing urban areas in that region. And so in the summers, when you need lots of irrigation, at the same time you also need air conditioning and all the other aspects of energy. To the point in 2012, there were rolling blackouts as the agricultural sector had to respond to a deficient, not enough energy to keep the agricultural systems going. So certainly something that energy, even at that scale, has issues and challenges. So one of the things we're working on in Nebraska is around the Nebraska Water Productivity Atlas. And the technologies and the satellite images, the equipment, the algorithms we have nowadays, in Nebraska we can now actually measure water productivity down to the farm level on a pretty short time scale as well. So we can assess what's going on a farm and be able to see what can be done in dry years, wet years, and how we might actually improve water productivity even further in these cases, from the farm right up to the state levels. This, of course, gets farmers worried that this is Big Brother looking in and trying to manage them, but we have to be careful how we start those discussions with farmers, but it's certainly a tool that promises a lot in how we can improve water productivity at those scales. And there's other technologies now as well, with drones, being able to get even more precision around the measurement of water productivity. And this information now can feed directly into these irrigation systems, where we can control the rate and the application of water on a very large scale. So that there's a lot of interesting technologies evolving in this space. Using many of the same techniques under a USAID project on drought monitoring in this region, we're basically bringing some of those techniques around evapotranspiration, water productivity. How do we measure that using the satellite images that are available? And there's this new technique around VIR satellites where we can actually do this down to 35 meters squares. This can be further scaled down to 30 meters. So what's really exciting about the sort of technology now is, from an agricultural perspective, we can measure evapotranspiration relatively accurately right down to even relatively small fields. So this becomes a really important tool for managing water, even in a region like the MENA where farms tend to be on the smaller side. Somewhere like Jordan where... Okay. I think in terms of managing the water productivity, this represents an important tool. In the Jordan Valley, maybe not so much because of the nature of the agriculture here, but certainly in the Nile Delta here, this is certainly an opportunity for us to help support the management